Hey there everyone, and welcome to week 3 of SGU's Easter series, Influence. In this week's series, we're talking about coaching. And as you're watching this video, I'm sure you can think back to a coach, or maybe a few coaches you've had that were pretty bad. Maybe they picked favorites, or maybe they yelled too much, or maybe they just talked down to you. Well, I can definitely tell you that I've had my fair share of coaches that were pretty rough. I can remember my whole life coaches telling me that I wasn't good enough because of my circumstances. I was too slow to play soccer, too skinny to play football, but I was too shy to be in the chorus, or even that I was too young to start my own club or activity. So if you're anything like me, I'm sure you can relate to a time where you felt not good enough because of your circumstances. Maybe you felt like you couldn't play a sport because you were too short. Maybe you felt like you couldn't join a club because you were too shy, or even that you couldn't start your own activity because you were too young. Or maybe it was something completely different entirely. And as I think about my laundry list of poor coaching in life, I'm reminded of someone who also didn't have good coaching around them and thought he wasn't good enough because of his circumstances. In the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah begins by feeling really sorry for himself because of his circumstances. But Jeremiah has a calling from the Lord to be appointed as a prophet to the nations. Feeling overwhelmed by the burden and responsibility of this calling, Jeremiah says to God, "Lord, I do not know how to speak, for I am too young." Even someone like Jeremiah, who was said to be a prophet to the nations, thought he wasn't good enough because of his circumstances. But God, being the amazing coach that he is, poured life into Jeremiah, saying, "Do not say I am too young. You must go to everyone I send to you and to say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and I will rescue you." And as I read the book of Jeremiah and heard God speak life into him, I'm reminded that while I may have had a lot of bad coaches in my life, I can specifically remember one coach who spoke life into me the way God did to Jeremiah. I can distinctly remember being in 8th grade trying out for the school basketball team. I was a good athlete, but I was young for my grade and I was also undersized. And I remember going to tryouts the first day so intimidated because I was the youngest one trying out, I was the skinniest, and I was definitely the shortest. And so I remember on day 2 of the tryouts, I pulled the coach over to the side right before practice, and with tears in my eyes, I said, "Coach Keenan, I'm too small, I'm too weak, and I'm too young to play on the team, and I'm just not good enough, I'm gonna quit." And in that moment, Coach Keenan said to me, and I'll never forget, he said, "Tommy, you may be smaller than everybody, but you can still be a point guard. You might not be as strong as everybody, but you can still work the hardest. And you might be younger than everybody, but you can be just as good as them." And all I could think in that moment was that he was right. Yes, my circumstances were true and valid, but that didn't mean I couldn't be a great basketball player. And yes, Jeremiah's circumstances were valid, but that didn't mean he couldn't be a great speaker and prophet. And for the first time in my life, I had a coach speak life over me like God did to Jeremiah. And in this scripture, Jeremiah says, "Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." This scripture illustrates how God told Jeremiah that his circumstances don't define him and not to be afraid, for God is with him always. In the same way that these coaches' words are still with me today, God is with us in presence always. The impact that this coach had on me changed the way I saw myself as it did with Jeremiah. So much so that I now coach people on helping them break their limiting beliefs and their programming from these imperfect coaches and teachers in their life. So you see, our circumstances don't define who we are. God says he knows us and sets us apart on purpose. He appointed us so that we could use our gifts to make an impact in the world. So I challenge you to seek out those coaches and people who speak life over you. Seek out those people who pour into you the way Coach Keenan did to me. And remember that no matter your circumstances, you can do all things through God, who is the ultimate coach in life and a coach that will never leave your side.